In ancient Egypt, the name was everything. Not metaphorically. Literally. The Egyptians believed that to speak a name was to keep a soul alive. And to erase a name was to kill a person a second time. More completely than any tomb, any mummy, any burial rite could ever undo. After his death, this man's name was removed from every monument in Egypt. His statues were smashed. His temples were demolished. His city was abandoned to the desert. The official records of the pharaohs, maintained with meticulous care for 1500 years, simply skipped him. As though he had never existed. They did not call him a failed king. They did not call him a conquered enemy. They called him, in the few texts that mentioned him at all, the criminal of Akhenaten. His name was Akhenaten. And he was either the most visionary ruler in Egyptian history, or the most dangerous, depending on who you ask. And when. In Egyptian art, pharaohs looked a specific way. Strong. Idealized. Timeless. For 1500 years, the artistic conventions of royal portraiture barely changed. Pharaohs were depicted as the gods they claimed to be, perfect, permanent, beyond the ravages of human time. And then Akhenaten arrived. The art produced during his reign broke every rule Egyptian civilization had established over 15 centuries. It showed the royal family eating, playing, grieving. It showed the pharaoh with a body that was distinctly, unmistakably unideal. Long face, protruding belly, wide hips, thighs that press together. A body that has generated more academic debate than almost any other figure in the ancient world. Medical historians have proposed over a dozen different conditions to explain his physical appearance. Marfan syndrome. Klinefelter syndrome. A rare endocrine disorder. None has achieved consensus. What we know is this. He chose to be depicted this way. In a civilization where pharaohs had absolute control over their own artistic representation, where a king could simply order his sculptors to make him look however he wished. Akhenaten ordered art that showed him as he actually was. A man who demanded truth in art was not going to be comfortable with comfortable lies in religion. And the religion of Egypt was the most powerful comfortable lie the ancient world had ever constructed. By the time Akhenaten was born, around 1370 BC, the priests of Ammonius had been accumulating power for 500 years. Not quietly. Not humbly. Enormously. At its height, the priesthood of Ammonius owned perhaps 30% of Egypt's agricultural land. It administered temple economies across the country, workshops, granaries, trading networks, that functioned as a state within the state. Its high priests had, on multiple occasions in Egyptian history, effectively controlled the government. This was not simply religion. This was the most sophisticated political machine the ancient world had produced. And it operated in the name of a god, Ammonius, whose worship it controlled, whose temples it administered, and whose divine authority it used to legitimize every decision it made. Akhenaten's father, Amenhotep III, had spent his reign managing this institution. Balancing royal power against priestly power. Making offerings. Conducting ceremonies. Maintaining the careful fiction that the pharaoh and the priests of Ammonius were partners rather than rivals. His son watched all of this. And reached a different conclusion. The comfortable arrangement, to the young prince, was not partnership. It was extortion. The priests of Ammonius had made themselves indispensable to Egyptian civilization by positioning themselves as the necessary intermediaries between ordinary people and their gods. The pharaoh needed them to legitimize his rule. The people needed them to manage the festivals, the rituals, the agricultural calendar, the daily religious life that structured every Egyptian's existence. Amenhotep IV had a different theological idea. One that would make the priests unnecessary. One that would concentrate all divine authority in a single source. One that could not be administered by any priest, served by any temple, or owned by any institution. The sun. Not the sun god. Not a deity with mythology and priests and ritual requirements. The physical sun itself. Pure light. Pure energy. The one thing in the Egyptian world that needed no priest to make it real. He called it the Aten. And in declaring it the one true God, he declared war on every institution that had accumulated power in the name of any other.
By order of the Pharaoh, your services are no longer required.
He began with his name. Amenhotep, Ammonius is satisfied, became Akhenaten, effective spirit of the Aten. Then he closed the temples of Ammonius. Then he ordered the name of Ammonius chiseled from monuments across Egypt, the exact punishment that would later be used against him. Then he seized the wealth of the Ammonius priesthood and redirected it to the royal house. In doing this, in a single, rapid, comprehensive campaign, he did not merely challenge the religious establishment. He destroyed it. Or tried to. And then he built a new world. In the desert. From nothing. On ground that had never been sacred to any other god. He called it Akhenaten, horizon of the Aten. We call it Amarna. Built in approximately 4 years. Populated by an entire court that moved from Thebes to the desert because the pharaoh commanded it. A city that was also a theological statement. Every temple open to the sky, flooded with sunlight, rather than enclosed in darkness where priests could control access to the divine. In Amarna, Akhenaten wrote one of the most extraordinary religious texts the ancient world produced. The Great Hymn to the Aten. It describes the Aten as the creator of all life. The source of all light. The God whose rays sustain every living thing, without distinction. The bird in the marsh. The fish in the river. The child in the womb. Egyptian. Nubian. Syrian. Every people under the sun. One God. Universal. Belonging to all. Scholars have noted the extraordinary similarity between the Great Hymn to the Aten and Psalm 104 of the Hebrew Bible. The same imagery. The same theological structure. The same universal creator God. Some historians have gone further, suggesting that Akhenaten's monotheism may be connected to the biblical story of Moses. That the concept of one universal God, which would become the foundation of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, may have roots in the desert city of a controversial Egyptian pharaoh. The debate is ongoing. The connection, if it exists, has never been proven. But the question itself tells you something about the scale of what Akhenaten was attempting. He was not reforming Egyptian religion. He was attempting to reinvent the concept of God. While Akhenaten was building his new city and writing hymns to the sun, his empire was sending him letters. The Amarna letters, discovered in 1887, a diplomatic archive of extraordinary historical importance, tell a story that Akhenaten's religious texts do not. They tell the story of an empire being lost in real time. Ribhada of Byblos wrote to Akhenaten approximately 60 times. 60 letters. Each one more urgent than the last. The Habru, a group disrupting the Levantine city-states, were advancing. His cities were falling. His allies were abandoning him. He needed Egyptian troops. He received replies that were, at best, promises. He received troops, almost never. Egypt's territory in the Levant, modern Syria, Lebanon, Israel, Palestine, had been built by decades of military campaigning by Akhenaten's predecessors. It was maintained by consistent military presence, regular diplomatic attention, and the credible threat of Egyptian force. Under Akhenaten, the attention went elsewhere. He was not incompetent. He was consumed. The project of reinventing Egyptian religion, building a new capital, restructuring the state's entire theological apparatus. It absorbed his reign entirely. The Hittites, under their king Suppiluliuma I, recognized the opportunity. They moved into Egyptian allied territory in Syria. Egyptian allies appealed for help. Egyptian help did not come. And then there was the plague. Archaeological analysis of Amarna's cemeteries has revealed evidence of significant population mortality during the later years of Akhenaten's reign. A plague, possibly the same epidemic that devastated the ancient Near East in this period, appears to have moved through his city. Some of his daughters died during this period. Akhenaten, who had declared that the Aten was the source of all life and all protection, watched his children die. A god of light who could not stop a plague. An empire dissolving at its edges. A court in a desert city, cut off from everything it had displaced. And a king who had bet everything, his theological revolution, his political transformation, his people's allegiance, on a vision that was beginning to look, to those watching, like something closer to madness. Around year 12 of his 17-year reign, something changed. What exactly, history has never fully agreed. A revolution without successors is not a revolution. It is an interruption. Akhenaten's revolution had no institutional foundation that could survive him. The Aten's worship was centered entirely on the pharaoh as the sole intermediary between humanity and the god. The pharaoh alone could truly access the Aten. The pharaoh alone could make the offerings that sustained the divine relationship. He had created a monotheism with no congregation. A god accessible only through a specific human being. What happened to that god when the human being died? Akhenaten died around 1336 BC. The circumstances are unknown. His tomb, carved into the cliffs near Amarna, was found ransacked and empty. His mummy has never been definitively identified, though a candidate was found in the Valley of the Kings. He simply disappeared from the record. A man who tried to reshape humanity's relationship with the divine. Left no certain trace of his own body. The child who followed him was 9 years old. His name was Tutankhamun. Living image of the Aten. Within 2 years, under the guidance of the advisors who surrounded him, the boy changed his name to Tutankhamun. Living image of Ammonius. The god Akhenaten had spent his entire reign trying to replace. The revolution was over. The restoration had begun. And the man who had tried to change the world was about to be made to have never existed. The erasure of Akhenaten was not spontaneous. It was planned. Implemented systematically. Over years. By people who understood that history is not what happened, it is what the record says happened. General Horemheb, who had served through the Amarna period, who had watched the empire's foreign policy collapse and the priesthoods be dismantled, eventually claimed the throne himself. And he implemented what Egyptologists now call one of the most thorough acts of damnatio memoriae, condemnation of memory, in the ancient world. Akhenaten's name was removed from the official king lists. His successors, Smenkhare, Neferneferuiten, Tutankhamun, I, were removed with him. In the official record, the reign of Amenhotep III was followed immediately by Horemheb. 20 years of Egyptian history, officially, did not happen. The city of Amarna was dismantled. Stone by stone. Every block reused, many with Akhenaten's reliefs turned face down so they could not be seen, his images literally built into the foundations of the buildings that replaced his revolution. In a final indignity, they filled in his tomb. Not destroyed. Filled. The carved scenes of his burial defaced. His sarcophagus smashed. The beautiful reliefs showing the royal family making offerings to the Aten, hacked from the walls. They removed his face from his own coffin. The man who had demanded the most honest portraiture in Egyptian history had his face taken from him in death. And then they waited for the desert to do the rest. For 3,000 years, it worked. He was not a controversial pharaoh. He was not a failed experiment. He was nothing. A void in the king lists where a man used to be. Here is the irony that history took 3,000 years to reveal. The erasure of Akhenaten failed. Because Akhenaten built in stone. And stone, it turns out, remembers everything. The Talatat blocks turned face down in Horemheb's pylons were discovered by archaeologists in the 20th century. Pulled out. Reassembled. Akhenaten's reliefs, the scenes from his temples, pieced back together like a puzzle that someone hid inside another building. Today Akhenaten is one of the most studied figures in Egyptian history. His city is one of the most excavated sites in the ancient world. His theology has been analyzed by scholars of religion, comparative mythology, and the origins of monotheism across every major faith tradition. And they grade him to the Aten. The poem he wrote to his one universal God is still read, still studied, still argued over. The man they called the criminal of Akhenaten may have written the theological foundation of 3 of the world's major religions. And didn't know it. But here is the warning his story carries for us. Not about religion. About power. About change. About what happens when a leader is so certain of their vision. So completely, so absolutely, so uncompromisingly certain. That they forget to ask whether the people they lead are coming with them. Akhenaten was not wrong that the priests of Ammonius had accumulated dangerous power. He was not wrong that a universal God, one that shone equally on every human being, was a more just theological concept than a pantheon controlled by institutional gatekeepers. He may not have been wrong about any of it. But being right is not enough. A revolution that does not bring its people with it is not a revolution. It is a reign. And reigns end. The priests of Ammonius waited. The military commanders waited. And the ordinary people of Egypt, who had been given a god they couldn't reach without the pharaoh and a city they never chose to live in, waited too. They waited for the man to die. And the moment he did, everything he had built began to disappear. They chiseled his name from every stone in Egypt. They erased him from the records. They called him the criminal. They demolished his city. They hid his face in his own tomb. And yet, here we are, saying his name, Akhenaten.